I am going to get a little fired up in this video. Do you remember that Reese case where the Second Amendment won? Well, as you can see here, Gunners of America tweeted this out, and I was just sitting in my computer and I saw this. Gunners of America tweeted out, breaking, at AG Pam Bondi has convinced a federal judge to order at the 2A Foundation to turn over a list of its members. So the Reese case was this 18 to 20-year-old handgun ban case in the Fifth Circuit, and basically we won. It was against the ATF. That's a whole separate topic about how that came about. But it was against the ATF. The Second Amendment won. Great. I think it was 2A Foundation, Firearms Policy Coalition, and there was one more, the usual suspects. And so we won. It was great. And then this order came out. So this is the order that kind of, I'll open it up here. This is the order that kind of it is the implementation of the injunction. So we won. So we won a permanent injunction enjoining the government from enforcing this rule. And here we go. We got a little bit of interesting language that got thrown into this injunction too in terms of the actual implementation of it. So within 21 days of the issuance of this judgment, the plaintiffs identified at paragraph 2B shall provide for the defendants a verified list of its members as of November 6th, 2020. That November 6th, 2020, by the way, was when the case was filed. So what this is saying essentially is that if you're not a member of 2A Foundation, if you're not a member of FPC on that date, you don't get enjoined. So you have to be a member of one of those two at that date in order to be able to buy a gun if you're between 18 and 20. And there's a couple obvious, issues with this. The first is that was like 5 years ago. So if you're like 18 to 20, you had to be like 15 and a member of FPC or at the lower end, right? 13 and a member of FPC for this to help you at all. It's kind of insane that they would require this, especially when they're saying it's unconstitutional to ban, the people. Now, they set up a whole firestorm, right, with Guns and Gadgets. Trying to remember the post, but Guns and Gadgets saying at Justice Department and at AG Pam Bondi are in no way, shape, or form to be considered pro Second Amendment. Now they want the names of members in the 2A Foundation, which is Registry. Second Amendment Foundation's not going to turn over the list, and they're pretty mad about it. I also am very mad about this, but I think I'm mad about it for a little bit of a different reason. So the first thing is, I think with this, it is very clear that AG Pam Bondi, right? Pam Bondi is not a principled Second Amendment supporter. In the past, she supported red flag laws. That's on record. She supported open carry bans. That's on record when she was in Florida. She supported a couple other things that are just obviously anti-Second Amendment. Especially the open carry one's pretty obvious because there is no history at the time of the founding where you weren't allowed to openly carry guns. Obviously, at the time of the founding, you absolutely were. And red flag laws are a complete violation of due process, obviously, to anyone who's been paying attention. So there's problematic stuff in her past. The one thing I would say, though, and I think this is what kind of people are overreacting to, I actually think blaming Pam Bondi for this is an overreaction. Now, could the government have done more to turn this law over? Absolutely. If I was Attorney General, would I have done this very, very differently? Absolutely. You bet. But the reality is, this is not unusual, from my understanding, in these sorts of cases, right? So I don't want us to overreact too much. The reality is, because of a variety of standing issues, the injunction applies specifically to the members of the suing organizations at the time when they were suing, right? The lawsuit was, they're the defendants. They won an injunction, and then I didn't sue them, right? I wasn't a member of FEC on November 6th, 2020, right? I was pretty young back then, so I guess what I would say with this is, this is not atypical, and I think it's jumping the gun to blame Pam Bondi. She's done a lot of good stuff, right? So, and a classic one is that she's pursuing rights restorations for nonviolent felons. It's like the Martha Stewart rule. Why should Martha Stewart be deprived of having a gun? She's not a danger to herself. She's not a danger to anyone. She's done that. Obviously, she just filed an amicus brief on behalf of the Second Amendment. I actually think, and I made a video about this yesterday, so this is kind of funny timing, but I actually think, on the balance, her attorney generalship has been pretty pro 2A. Actually, maybe the most pro 2A of any attorney general in recent memory. And so I want us to be a little bit more careful, at least in the Second Amendment space. Is this a violation? Absolutely. Absolutely, this is a violation of your Second Amendment rights. And I'm pretty pissed off that, I'm not 18 to 20, but if I was 18 to 20, I'd be pretty mad if I was in Mississippi, Louisiana, and Texas to not be able to buy a handgun, right? That is an absolute violation of my rights. If I'm 18 to 20, I can go find the Army. They can give me a handgun. So why would I not be allowed to lawfully own one, right? As not a danger to myself or others. It doesn't make sense. There's no logical reason, right, why this would be the case. Absolutely none at all. I'm not going to argue that. But what I would argue is that this is the judge writing, right? An anti-gun judge writing, all of this. So he's obviously going to want to restrict it. And that's not really Pam Bondi's fault, right? He's going to want to put hurdles in the sweat, in this, saying, you have to provide a list so we can say who's enjoined and who's not. And that's not reasonable. That's not what I would do. But it's sort of understandable given that there is a class of defendants and they won and they get an injunction against that class of defendants. So from my perspective, again, is this a violation of your rights? Absolutely. Absolutely, your rights are being violated. But there's no real evidence that this is Pam Bondi's fault. That this particular judgment is Pam Bondi's fault. The other thing I want to say is it is absolutely wrong to create a gun registry for a number of reasons, not least of which it kind of defeats the whole point, right? If you can just say this guy's a firearm owner and this guy's not, well, firstly, it's bad for the firearm owners because the government wants to become tyrannical. They can take just our guns. It's also bad for the people that don't have firearms, right? Because if you walk in, if I didn't have a firearm, for instance, and I walked into a gas station, I'd want a potential criminal, to think that everybody else in that gas station might have a firearm, and that would protect me, or that I might have a firearm, and that would protect me. So gun registries are unequivocally bad for everyone. But the reality is, this is not really the point. They're not really creating a registry, in my opinion here. Again, I'm going to get blasted. I'm sure the comments are blasting me right now. Really, the point of this is to say, this group of people, this injunction applies to, and this group of people it doesn't. And I know that might sound naive. I know that might sound stupid. I do genuinely think that in this particular instance, it's somewhat reasonable. It's not what we'd want. It's not how I would do it. But if you think from the mindset of someone who's relatively anti-gun and kind of wrote this decision unwillingly, then that makes sense. And you can see Mark Smith, who's by far the kind of biggest scholar on this topic, would agree with me on this point. I actually read this decision. It doesn't mention her anywhere, obviously, other than the fact that she's in charge of the Department of Justice. And I agree with him. It is not accurate to attack Pam Bondi on this point. Again, I just attacked her in this video. I just attacked her. But this is not strictly speaking the case. This is not strictly speaking the case. It was a liberal district court judge. He's going to try and put roadblocks, and he found a roadblock that's like, you can argue, right? You can argue that's the right thing to do. You can say, okay, these are the plaintiffs and these are the defendants, and here we go. Like, we need to figure out who these people are in order to apply the injunction to them. Again, not what I would do. I'm not super happy with it. But is it kind of reasonable? Yeah, it kind of is. And it's a liberal judge, so he's going to try and find anything reasonable to try and put in our way. And so I don't think this is a great violation of our rights. I think the law is a great violation of our rights. But I don't think confining the injunction in this case, and requesting it, given that you're confining the injunction, is the violation, right? I think the violation is that we're number one, confining it, and number two, that this was even a problem to begin with. So I guess I know I'm getting a little bit heated and perhaps not the most articulate, but I'd like to know what you guys think. Do you kind of understand my perspective? Again, I'm an absolutely principled 2A guy. Absolutely principled 2A guy. And I think it's wrong to attack her on this front. I'll attack Pam Bondi. I will continue to attack Pam Bondi. But let's just be fair. This isn't really her fault. There's a lot of things that are her fault, and this is not really one of them. But anyway, I'd like to know what you guys think. I hope you do enjoy the video, by the way. If you did, please do subscribe. Obviously, a nice brand new channel, so I really do appreciate all the subscriptions so far. And I'll see you in the next one.